Jon Voight has always been a man of contradictions, a figure of intensity, vulnerability, and quiet rebellion. Born on December 29, 1938, in Yonkers, New York, to a devout Catholic family of Czech and Slovak descent, he grew up with a sense of duty and restraint that would later collide with his restless imagination. When he entered Hollywood in the 1960s, he didn't look like the typical star of his generation. He was cerebral, deliberate, and unpredictable, an actor who approached every role like a confession. His breakout came in Midnight Cowboy 1969, where he played Joe Buck, a naive Texan drifting through New York's underbelly, a performance so raw and human it earned him an Academy Award nomination and changed the face of American cinema. Then came Deliverance Coming Home Runaway Train films that revealed an artist obsessed with moral struggle. But if his characters sought redemption on screen, Voight himself often seemed to battle for it off-screen. Behind the accolades and controversy, his political outspokenness, his spiritual awakenings, his moments of public solitude was the role he never quite mastered: fatherhood. He had 2 children, both born from his marriage to actress Marcheline Bertrand. They would grow up to become reflections of his genius and his contradictions, each inheriting not just his artistry, but his complexity. Their names, James Haven and Angelina Jolie, would one day eclipse his own, but their stories remain intertwined with his, a lineage defined by fame, forgiveness, and the long, uneven road to reconciliation. Number 2. James Haven. James Haven. Voight was born on May 11, 1973 in Los Angeles, the first child of Jon Voight and actress Marcheline Bertrand. From the moment he was born, James entered a household divided between ambition and fragility. A father ascending toward Hollywood superstardom, and a mother who valued silence, spirituality, and emotional depth. Their marriage would fracture when James was still very young, and that fracture would define the coordinates of his life. When his parents separated in 1976 and later divorced, James and his younger sister, Angelina Jolie, were raised primarily by their mother. Marcheline chose a life far from the spotlight, moving the children into a world shaped not by Hollywood glamour, but by tenderness, intuition, and resilience. Voight's absence became the quiet echo running through James's childhood, a presence felt more than seen, a myth more than a man. Over time, resentment settled into the family. Marcheline and her children developed an emotional shield that kept Voight at a distance for many years. As James grew older, he became a gentle and introspective spirit. He studied filmmaking at USC, inheriting his father's creative instinct, but expressing it with a softness that contrasted sharply with Voight's intensity. He acted in a few films, including Gia 1998 and Original Sin 2001, both starring Angelina. But he soon moved behind the camera, working as a producer, director, and advocate. His compassion for causes, particularly humanitarian and women's issues, reflected more of his mother's influence than his father's. James's bond with Angelina became one of the most public aspects of his life. For years they were inseparable, 2 children shaped by the same wounds, finding solace in each other's understanding of growing up in a broken family. In the early 2000s, as Angelina's fame exploded, James stood by her side, not as a shadow, but as a steadying presence. Yet behind their closeness was the unresolved tension with their father, a rift that deepened after Voight publicly criticized Angelina in 2002. Time, however, has its way of altering perspective. After Marcheline died in 2007, the emotional landscape shifted. Loss has a way of softening borders. Gradually, James reconnected with his father, not with fanfare, but with quiet reconciliation. He once said, "Forgiveness is not an event, it's a process." In that single sentence, he captured the complexity of their family story. Today, James lives largely out of the spotlight, focusing on humanitarian work, small-scale film projects, and private advocacy. He remains one of the most enigmatic figures in the Voight lineage, an emotional guardian who turned pain into sensitivity and silence into strength. If Jon Voight represents conflict and reinvention, James Haven represents the quiet pursuit of peace, a son who learned early that what a family breaks, time and compassion can slowly begin to mend. Number 1. Angelina Jolie. Angelina Jolie Voight was born on June 4, 1975, in Los Angeles, a child born into contradiction. Hollywood royalty on one side and emotional instability on the other. Her arrival came at a moment when her father, Jon Voight, was becoming one of the most celebrated actors of his generation. But fame did not make him steady. By the time Angelina was a toddler, the marriage between Voight and Marcheline Bertrand had collapsed, leaving Angelina and her older brother James to be raised by their mother alone. For Angelina, the absence of her father was not merely physical, it was emotional, a wound that shaped her early identity. She once said she did not grow up with a sense of a father, only with echoes of broken promises and the responsibility of caring for a mother who carried her own quiet grief. Marcheline poured everything into her children, building a world where compassion mattered more than glamour, and where the pain of abandonment became fuel for empathy. Angelina internalized all of it. As a young girl, she gravitated toward extremes: darkness, rebellion, and a fierce hunger to feel something real. She studied at the Lee Strasberg Theater Institute, modeling briefly, before diving into acting with an intensity that felt volcanic, not performative. When she exploded onto the screen in Gia 1998, embodying the tragic supermodel Gia Karangi, the world saw not a performance, but a confession. Throughout the early 2000s, she became the most enigmatic figure in Hollywood, tattooed fearless, walking the razor's edge between self-destruction and transcendence. Films like Girl Interrupted 1999, for which she won an Oscar, showcased a talent that burned too brightly to ignore. But it was her humanitarian awakening, sparked by filming Lara Croft Tomb Raider in Cambodia, that transformed her from celebrity into global force. She became a UNHCR Goodwill Ambassador, later a special envoy, traveling to conflict zones, advocating for refugees, and redefining what it meant for a movie star to wield influence. Her relationship with Jon Voight remained fractured for years. His public comments in 2002, claiming she had serious mental problems, widened the rift. But after Marcheline's death in 2007, something shifted. Grief softened what anger had hardened. Slowly and with caution, Angelina allowed her father back into her children's lives. The reconciliation was not dramatic, it was gradual, imperfect, and deeply human. Today, Angelina stands as one of the most powerful and multifaceted figures in global culture. An actor, director, humanitarian, and mother of 6. Her life has become an act of reclamation, reclaiming identity, reclaiming purpose, reclaiming the story of a family that once seemed defined by fracture. Through Angelina, Jon Voight's legacy passed through fire. What emerged was not a reflection of his contradictions, but a reinvention of them. A daughter who inherited his intensity and transformed it into activism, artistry, and a global voice for justice. She is in every sense the continuation of the Voight story, not as imitation, but as evolution. Jon Voight's life has always been a story of dualities: art and conflict, brilliance and turbulence, devotion and distance. He rose from a traditional East Coast upbringing to become one of the most powerful actors of his generation. Yet he struggled with the one role that demanded vulnerability instead of performance, being a father. His children, James Haven and Angelina Jolie, grew up in the shadow of both his talent and his absence, shaped by the emotional void left behind when their parents' marriage collapsed. James became the quiet chronicler of the family's pain, gentle, introspective, and fiercely loyal to the one person who held the family together, Marcheline Bertrand. He learned early how to turn wounds into empathy, choosing a life behind the camera rather than before it. His bond with his sister became his compass, and his gradual reconciliation with his father stands as proof that understanding can grow even from brokenness. Angelina became the fire. She inherited Jon's intensity, but forged it into something larger, an identity built from survival, transformation, and a relentless pursuit of meaning. She became a global force for humanitarian work, an Oscar-winning actress, a filmmaker, and a symbol of resilience. In her, the Voight lineage evolved from a story of personal conflict into one of global compassion. Her eventual reconciliation with Jon did not erase their history. It reframed it, proving that legacy is not defined by perfection, but by persistence. Together, James and Angelina reveal the full spectrum of Jon Voight's imprint, his contradictions, his genius, the fractures he caused, and the healing he inspired. Their lives testify to a truth the public rarely sees, that the children of legends inherit not only fame, but also the emotional architecture of their parents' lives. Jon Voight once said, "The hardest thing to face is yourself." For him, that meant confronting the distance he created and the love he nearly lost. In the end, his greatest legacy may not be the films that earned him glory, but the lives of two children who transformed pain into purpose and who reclaimed their family story on their own terms.